"Don't hurt him," the alien princess cried. "He's my future husband. Let me tell you something about the galaxy. It is big, it is old, and it does not care about you. Especially if you are human. Especially if you are a human sitting in chains aboard an alien warship, waiting for a death sentence you earned by doing the right thing. My name is Marcus Cole, Sergeant, Unske Marines, 3rd Expeditionary Contact Unit. And 3 days ago, I saved the life of an alien princess. My reward? A trial, a set of chains, and a room with no windows. Let me back up. Humanity had been part of the galactic community for about 90 years. We had faster-than-light travel. We had colonies on a dozen worlds. We had embassies and trade routes and all the things that make a species look respectable. But to the rest of the galaxy, we were still the new kids, the small ones, the soft ones. No scales, no claws, no psychic abilities. Most alien species looked at humans the way you might look at a puppy that learned to open a door. Cute, but not serious. The Valari Dominion was the opposite of not serious. They were 8 feet tall, covered in dark ridged scales, and built like walking tanks. They had ruled their corner of the galaxy for thousands of years through strength, tradition, and a code of honor so rigid you could break your teeth on it. When the Valari walked into a room, every other species found somewhere else to be. My unit was assigned to escort a United Nations diplomatic team to a neutral space station called the Harmony. The mission was simple: stand in the corner, look professional, and make sure nobody bothered the ambassadors while they talked trade deals with the Valari delegation. Easy duty. The Valari delegation included Princess Kalith Soravani, youngest daughter of the Emperor himself. I noticed her the moment she entered the banquet hall. She was tall, like all Valari, with silver-white scales and sharp golden eyes that seemed to read everything in the room at once. She moved through the crowd like water through stone, graceful and untouchable. I was standing by the east wall, trying not to look bored, when the lights went out. The emergency strips kicked in a second later, painting everything in red. Then came the sound of breaking glass, and the shriek of weapons charging. Shapes poured through the ventilation shafts. Kreth, insectoid mercenaries with too many limbs and black, glossy armor that made them look like nightmares given legs. They hit the Valari Royal Guards first. Fast, coordinated, professional. 3 guards went down before anyone understood what was happening. The diplomats scattered. People screamed. The station's security grid was dead. Someone had disabled it from inside. I saw 2 Kreth moving straight for the princess. I did not think about it. Thinking is slow. Training is fast. I grabbed a fallen Valari guard's weapon from the floor. It was heavy, built for hands much larger than mine, and it nearly pulled me off balance. But I got it up, got it aimed, and fired. The first Kreth stumbled. The second turned toward me, surprised. I do not think it expected a human to be a problem. I put myself between them and the princess, and kept moving. My squad training took over completely. Find cover, return fire, protect the principal. Move, move, move. A Kreth blade caught me across the shoulder. It burned like nothing I had ever felt, but I kept going. Another one came at me from the side, and I blocked it with my forearm. The blade went clean through the flesh of my left arm. I will not pretend I was brave about it, I screamed, but I pulled the blade out, switched it to my good hand, and kept fighting. The Kreth were trained to fight species that stopped when they were hurt. Big, powerful species that would pause to assess damage, that would retreat when the pain became too much. That was logical, that was sensible. I was neither of those things. I was running on adrenaline and stubbornness, and I had decided that nobody was going to touch this woman while I was still breathing. I got her to an emergency bulkhead room at the end of a corridor, sealed the door, made sure she was unharmed. Then I sat down against the wall and watched the ceiling spin above me, while my blood made a mess of the very clean Valari floor. When I woke up, I was in a medical bay, and I was in chains. A Valari commander stood over me with an expression that could freeze a star. He informed me, in a voice that had no warmth in it whatsoever, that I had committed 3 capital offenses under Valari law. First, I had touched a member of the royal bloodline. Physical contact with royalty by a non-Valari was punishable by death. Second, I had used a Valari weapon without caste authorization. Third, I had shed blood in the presence of the princess, which was a desecration of royal sanctity. I stared at him. I opened my mouth. I closed it again. I saved her life, I said finally. The law is the law, he replied. They brought me before the Valari High Court aboard their flagship. The emperor presided, an ancient figure whose scales had gone dark with age, whose eyes held the weight of 3 centuries of rule. I stood in my chains, still bandaged, still bleeding a little through the wrappings, and listened to a room full of giants debate whether I should die quickly or slowly. The emperor raised his hand. The court fell silent. He pronounced the sentence. Death by Kalvorath. Ritual combat against a Valari champion. It was not really combat. It was an execution with extra steps. I closed my eyes. I am a Marine. I have made my peace with dying more times than I can count. But dying for saving someone? That is a special kind of unfair that sits in your chest like a stone. Then the doors of the court flew open. Princess Kalith walked in like she owned the room. Which, in a way, she did. "Don't hurt him," she cried, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. Every head turned, every eye locked onto her. He is my future husband. I would like to tell you that I reacted with dignity, that I stood tall and accepted this twist of fate with quiet composure. Instead, I said, out loud, in front of the entire Valari High Court, "I am sorry." What? Kalith invoked something called the Right of Soravan, an ancient law that allowed a royal to claim a life debt bond with their savior, granting them the status of consort candidate. It meant I could not be touched by the court until the claim was resolved. The court erupted. The emperor looked like he wanted to break something, but tradition was tradition, and the Valari did not break tradition. Not even for this. I was removed from death row and placed under royal custody, which meant I went from being a prisoner to being a different kind of prisoner, one with nicer furniture. Kalith visited me that evening. She was calmer now, more composed. "I did not do that because I have feelings for you," she said plainly. "I did it because you would have been killed for saving my life, and that is wrong." "Okay," I said. "So what happens now?" "Now you survive the trials." The trials. Of course there were trials. The Valari court was not going to accept a human consort candidate without proof of worthiness. So they designed 3 challenges, each meant to prove I was unworthy, each meant to make me fail so badly that the claim would be dissolved, and they could go back to executing me in peace. The first trial was endurance. I had to stand motionless on a platform in a chamber, cooled to a temperature that would make an Arctic winter feel like a beach vacation. The Valari, cold-blooded and scaled, handled it easily. I was expected to collapse within minutes. I stood there for 4 hours. My body shook so hard I thought my bones would come apart. My fingers went numb, then my arms, then my legs. I could not feel my face. I could not feel much of anything, but I kept standing, not because I was strong, because I was too stubborn to give them the satisfaction of watching me fall. When the trial ended and I walked off the platform on my own 2 feet, the Valari audience did not cheer. They did not clap. They just stared, and in their silence I heard something that might have been the beginning of respect. The second trial was strategy, a war simulation, played out on a holographic battlefield. The Valari expected direct confrontation, overwhelming force, the kind of head-on warfare their culture celebrated. I gave them guerrilla tactics instead, ambushes, misdirection, feints that drew their forces out of position. I hid my units, struck from unexpected angles, and retreated before they could respond. I won the simulation in half the expected time. The Valari generals looked at me like I had cheated. In their culture, what I had done was almost shameful. You were supposed to meet your enemy face to face. I had fought to win, not to look honorable, and that disturbed them more than losing. The third trial was combat. One-on-one. Me against a Valari warrior named Torak, who stood a full 3 feet taller than me, and could probably have torn a small vehicle apart with his bare hands. I could not beat him in a straight fight. I knew that. He knew that. Everyone in the arena knew that. So I did not fight straight. I used speed, because I was faster. I used the environment, because I was smaller, and could move in spaces he could not. I watched how he moved, found the patterns in his attacks, and waited for the opening I needed. It came after what felt like an eternity. Torak swung wide, overcommitting to a strike meant to end the fight. I ducked under it, got inside his guard, and hit a nerve cluster at the base of his neck that Kalith had told me about during one of our late-night conversations. Torak dropped to one knee. The match was over. The crowd said nothing. The silence in that arena was louder than any cheer I have ever heard. After the trials, something changed. Not in the court, they still wanted me gone. But Kalith started looking at me differently. We talked more. She asked me about Earth, about oceans and forests, and the concept of seasons. She asked me why I had risked my life for someone I had never met. Because you needed help, I said. That is enough. She did not understand that at first. In Valari culture, you fought for honor, for bloodline, for duty. The idea of fighting for a stranger, simply because they were in danger, was alien to her, in the truest sense of the word. But she learned, and I learned about her. I learned about the pressure of being royal, the weight of 1,000 expectations that sat on her shoulders every single day. I learned that behind those golden eyes was a mind sharper than any blade, a woman who saw the cracks in her own empire and wanted to fix them. I learned that she had claimed me not just to save my life, but because she believed her people needed to see what humans really were. Not weak, not primitive, different, and maybe, in some ways, stronger than anyone expected. Then we discovered the truth about the assassination attempt. It was not random. A Valari noble, named Lord Varric, the Emperor's own nephew, had hired the Kreth to eliminate Kalith and weaken the royal bloodline so he could claim the throne. Varric challenged me directly to Kalvorath when he realized we were close to exposing him. Under Valari law, a noble's challenge could not be refused. This time, there would be no simulation, no controlled environment. This was real. Varric was the finest warrior the Valari had produced in a generation. He was everything I was not. Faster, stronger, more experienced. He took me apart in that arena. Every time I went down, the crowd expected me to stay down. That was what made sense. That was what any rational being would do. But humans are not always rational. I got up. Every single time. Bleeding, broken, barely able to see straight, I stood back up. Not because I thought I could win. I could not win. And I knew it. I stood up because that is what we do. It is the only thing humans have ever truly been great at. We get knocked down, and we get back up, and we keep going until the universe runs out of ways to stop us. I did not need to beat Varric. I just needed to give Kalith enough time. And while I kept that man busy in the arena, she brought the evidence of his treason to the Emperor. Every message, every payment, every secret meeting, all of it. The Emperor stopped the fight. Varric was stripped of his title and taken away. And I stood there in the middle of that arena, barely conscious, held together by bandages and willpower, and I did not fall. I woke up in the medical bay for the second time. Kalith was sitting beside me. The Emperor came to see me later. He dropped all charges. He offered me a place in the Valari court, something that had never been given to a non-Valari in the history of the Dominion. I turned it down, politely. I am a Marine, Your Majesty, I said. I have a unit. I have a duty. He studied me for a long moment. Then he said something I will carry with me for the rest of my life. I have ruled for 3 centuries. I have conquered worlds. But I have never seen a species so fragile fight so fiercely for things that are not their own. Perhaps the galaxy has underestimated your kind. On my last day aboard the flagship, Kalith met me at the docking port. We stood there, 2 people from 2 completely different worlds, and neither of us quite knew what to say. The right of Sauravon, she said quietly. The claim remains open until both parties reject it. I grinned, even though it hurt my face to do it. Well, I have some leave coming up. Maybe I will visit. She smiled, and I learned later that no human had ever made a Valari royal smile before. The galaxy thinks humans are weak, small, short-lived, fragile, and maybe we are all of those things. But there is a reason the mightiest empire in the known universe offered a human a seat at their table. It is not because we are the strongest. It is because when everything falls apart, when the lights go out and the world comes crashing down, we are the ones still standing in the wreckage, too stubborn and too foolish to understand that we were supposed to lose. And sometimes, that is enough.